I'm Marcy Marcusa, and on This is Manitoba Today, let's talk tariffs. They've now become a reality, and that means that we are facing, because of U.S. President Donald Trump's new tariffs, 25% across the board on Canadian exports, a further 10% on Canadian energy, and maybe more to come. We could see a further 25% tariff on all imported steel and aluminum coming into Canada. And so let's talk about what is going to be impacted. We'll start with steel, actually. Manitoba businesses have been bracing for the changes. Some have already felt the impact, though, and that does include Justin Copp. He's the co-owner of Brunswick Steel in Springfield, Manitoba. Here's our conversation. Hello to you.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Crazy times. So obviously this morning,
Certainly.
The reality of tariffs part one, does that make you think differently about March 12th?
Oh, it just seems like it's one thing after another these days. I don't know if it really changes our mindset looking forward to March 12th. This has already been something that we've been planning for a number of months. You never really know with the Trump administration if any of this will really happen until it happens. So you sort of plan for the worst and hope for the best. And here we are with the across the board tariffs announced for today, and the steel and aluminum coming. So yeah, I mean we've shifted supply chains. We've tried to bulk up on inventories as best as we can to avoid any disruption. But you kind of just got to roll with the punches.
So what is, just for people that don't know your business, Justin, can you talk a little bit more about what kind of projects your company typically works on? And then we can kind of understand better when you say bulk up supply chains and shifted markets, what that means.
Sure. Great question. We're a steel distributor, so we buy in big volumes from steel producing mills. And those mills are located all over the world, really, but a lot in the US and Canada. And we hold that inventory till our customers need it, whether that be in raw steel, so they'd be buying as-is parts for construction or manufacturing, or we take that steel and we cut it and bend it and shape it and produce parts for them. So not only are we supplying distribution goods, but we're also supplying manufactured goods.
So does that mean then that counter tariffs will also impact you? Are you shipping back across the border once you've made the steel into something else?
Yeah, we don't, but our customers do. So we're already seeing a slowdown in business volumes. We're seeing customers way more cautious in what they're buying, what they're producing. So it's already having an effect. It's already been having an effect for probably a month and a half.
How have you bulked up on inventory? How much did you bring in, and then where are you storing everything? What's it? What is that? What challenges is that posed?
Well, the challenge is space for sure. You're limited to what you can support and store effectively and safely in your building. But we're built to handle some decent volumes. And then it's just managing things like cash flow. You need to be able to afford to do this at any given time. So when you're buying 20, 30, 40% more inventory, you need to be careful about those things and prudent, but you can sort of offset things for a few months. But you're also we're switching supply chains. We're buying from different vendors that are less risky of potential tariffs. We're doing those things as well.
What kind of a vendor is less risky for potential tariffs? Are you having to stay in Canada, or are there parts of the States that you that you have found that are pockets for you because you maybe have a long-standing business relationship? Like, how do you decide who's less risky?
Yeah, we're trying to shift as much as possible to Canadian. Now, having said that, we've already done a lot of that during the 2018 tariffs that came in. The Section 232 tariffs at those times. So we're shifting Canadian as best as possible. It's not always realistic in our business, especially in a short-term change. Like there's some products that just aren't produced in Canada. So, there are some European vendors that we've taken advantage of and some overseas vendors, in Asia. But our preference has always been to support North American made product. It really is when I think of domestic steel, I think of U.S. and Canadian steel. So To shift those supply chains aren't easy. You could be dealing with, potentially quality issues if you aren't, used to that vendor and had experience with them. So, there are concerns, there are risks with changing and moving, but it's a necessity at these times.
You said some of your protection right now is because you already started switching markets and thinking differently after 2018.
For sure.
I understand at that time you were, is it fair to say, were less prepared or caught more, off guard? So this has made, this 2025 tariff, at least you have some different things in place?
Yeah, for sure. We have a much more mature supply chain today. So yeah, I mean, 2018 really forced us. Yeah, absolutely, caught us off guard. Flat-footed, and forced us to make some changes to how we buy our steel. So yeah, some of those changes were already in effect, and then some of those changes were a little easier to switch gears and move back to certain vendors. But some of these things, they take months to procure. Like, we've got some products, you need to plan 4, 6, 8 months in advance. So there are risks with some of those products, and there's some products that just aren't made in Canada anymore. Steel beams, for example, in construction. You see them going up on buildings all the time. We haven't made steel beams in Canada for probably 20 years. So, there's some things that you just can't shift gears on real fast, but there's things that you can do, and the things that you can control, you move and adjust.
What percentage of your steel would come from the U.S. markets overall?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. Maybe probably about 30%.
Okay.
So yeah.
And what was it before?
And that was higher before.
Okay, I was going to say,
that was higher before. Yeah, probably 50% then, maybe even a little bit higher. So we have made some permanent adjustments there. What
are you hearing from your American colleagues about these tariffs? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, business is about relationships. And as you said, you look at this as the North American steel market. So, I mean, we're in a tricky time now because I think a lot of businesses are saying, that we're still kind of hoping for an after. There will be some kind of after. So you have to be careful with, maintaining relationships while at the same time staying strong here in Canada, and then obviously trying to keep your business running. So how tricky has that been?
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe that these won't last all that long. I mean, we have very, very integrated supply chains. You hear people referencing on the news parts going across back and forth multiple times. And that is true. So, from a customer standpoint, I have very few direct customers in the U.S. Most of my customers are Canadians who are shipping to the U.S. So those relationships are going to stay strong. I'm not worried about those, although, if some manufacturing moves to the States, that could be a problem. But from my colleagues who either own service centers or run service centers in the States, I've heard very little. It's really not a news story from concern on supply. They like the protectionism. They like driving steel prices up. Because that's what this is going to do. We've already seen some impacts and rising steel prices, over the last 6 weeks or so, kind of in anticipation of these tariffs. And most steel companies, they want those prices to be up.
Thank you very much for your perspective, Justin Copp. Obviously, we'll probably talk to you on the 12th.
Thanks, Marcy. Take care.
You too. That's Manitoba business owner Justin Copp. He's the co-owner of Brunswick Steel in Springfield, Manitoba. Well, most immediately when these tariff threats came to be, the first industry we reached out to here was the pork industry in this province. And that is because Manitoba exported $439 million worth of pork and live pigs to the U.S. in 2023. That does make Manitoba Pork's largest export market. And when the threats first came out, my next guest said they were, quote, bracing for very significant impact. So now that the Trump tariffs are officially here, let's hear what Cam Dahl has to say. He is spokesperson for Manitoba's pork producers. See you. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's one word for how you're feeling today?
Concerned is probably the top of the list. This is a difficult day.
What was the talk right up to sort of the wire of, whatever it would have been, I guess, midnight last night, or I guess midnight this morning, technically? Were you hopeful at all, or was the writing on the wall in the last couple of days?
Well, there was a little bit of hope that there would have been ways of keeping these tariffs off. So I wouldn't use the word hopeful but a little bit of hope. Yes, we were still thinking that there was a possibility, but of course that's not the case this morning.
What does today look like? What do you need to hear from leaders in Manitoba about protecting your industry?
Well, I think that we need to hear about what is going to happen to support workers. This is going to impact jobs. There are 22,000 people that depend on the pork industry in Manitoba, and they're skilled workers. We need them to stay in Manitoba and to stay in the industry. So how are we going to ensure that people can stay in their jobs? Because this is going to have an impact on employment in Manitoba. So I think that's the first thing that I'm looking for, and then I'm looking for how are we going to support Canadian product? How are we going to support demand here in Canada and here in Manitoba? And that's going to be key too for keeping the industry going is ramping up our consumption here in Canada, because of course Canada is the biggest market for the U.S. as well.
Where are the jobs you're most concerned about? What part of the province? Are we talking big processing plants, or what are you thinking about today?
The answer is yes. It's all across the board. It's the jobs on the farms, or through trucking, through our processors in places like Brandon, Neepawa, Winnipeg here, the bacon plant, as well as places like Winkler. So it's throughout the whole province and in every part of the value chain. There's going to be pressure on jobs. It was.
We were talking to the steel industry this morning. Of course, they're a week out from seeing what will happen with those threatened tariffs. But, one of the things that we were talking about is how quickly the impact of these tariffs, because they're so steep, could be felt. And in that interview, there was a, conversation saying the reality is that there could be steel plants. This was in the context of that talk, of course, that interview, but there could be shutdown of plants like within a week. I'm wondering for the pork producers and for pork, how quickly do you think the impacts will actually be felt potentially?
Well, I think producers and processors are going to feel the impacts immediately, and we're going to see that disruption at the border. But of course, you can't just turn off a hog farm, and so. We will see reductions in production, and we will see producers pulling back and processors pulling back. But that pullback will likely take a little bit of time.
So what do you do, Cam, to, in Canada? Like we hear interprovincial, regulations might be something that we hear the feds talk about at 9:30 this morning, and they're already talking about trying to improve those relationships. Does that help Manitoba pork producers?
Well, it's again, the U.S. is 40% of our market. You mentioned, over $400 million worth of pork, and there's also over 3 million live pigs that go into the U.S. every year. So we're not going to replace that size of that market with domestic consumption. But I would like to see a focus on encouraging Canadians to look for a Canadian product in their grocery store, and if there needs to be tariffs put in place on U.S. pork products to help encourage that demand. Unfortunately, that's going to mean increases in prices, but I think we're going to see that anyways.
What do your meetings look like today? Where are you going to spend your day?
Well, the day is full. That's for sure. The first priority is going to be talking to producers, and of course both our federal and provincial governments as well.
I guess just last, what are the conversations like with your U.S. counterparts then? All around, everybody has so much uncertainty. I'm just curious because you're always in this delicate balance too of having to keep that, as I said to the steel producer this morning, you're trying to keep, or steel distributor rather, but you're trying to keep that relationship going at a time when really it's out of your hands.
It is out of our hands, but we have a really strong relationship with our U.S. Customers, and there's a good understanding on both sides of the border that the integrated market is good for producers in both countries, and it's good for consumers in both countries, and that understanding is there. So hopefully we'll see that communicated up to the administration. But the relationship with our American counterparts is good, and as I said, they understand that this is bad for them as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's Cam Dahl. He's the spokesperson for Manitoba Pork Producers. Well, This is Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and as our ongoing coverage of the tariff story and other stories continues on our podcast episodes, if you've been listening and tuning in, don't forget to like, follow, and share.